Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall, and it's Super Bowl week in America. And soon I'll be joined by three beer enthusiasts and professionals from Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Phoenix to talk about food, travel, and local pints. And we're going to get into it all in just a moment. But first, please go visit allaboutbeer.com for original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Beer Travelers, Brewer to Brewer, and the All About Beer podcast by simply searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. This show and all of the work we do is supported by you. You can visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to help keep the content fresh. A few bucks goes a long way to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising on this show, you can please email info@allaboutbeer.com. Reminder, if you are a smoked beer fan, and of course you are, go check out This Week in Rauch Beer. You can search the Facebook group or follow on Instagram and Twitter at TW Rauch Beer. There's a lot of focus on football this week as the Super Bowl is coming up on Sunday. And to get excited about the game and the cities involved, I've asked three of the leading beer experts from Philly, Kansas City, and Phoenix/Glendale to come on the show. An 18-year veteran of the craft brewing industry, Jeremy Danner is the digital marketing manager and brand ambassador for Four Hands Brewing Company. Prior to his current position, Danner worked in the brewing, cellar, packaging, management, and marketing roles at 75th Street Brewery, the Power Plant Restaurant and Brewery, and Boulevard Brewing Company. He's contributed to brewing, research and development, branding, marketing, and media, helping breweries connect to consumers through his love of craft beer. He's also got a half-decent Twitter follow. Rob Fulmer is the executive director of the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild. And Bryan Kolesar is a reporter and author based in Pennsylvania. He's the founder of the Brew Lounge blog, the author of the Beer Lovers Mid-Atlantic, and has worked for both the Mid-Atlantic Brewing News and the Ale Street News. All of them joined me via Zoom. This is always a time of year when people are focused on the game and the teams involved, but I think it's a great chance to sort of talk about the cities behind both where the game is being played and the two teams that are in it. And I wonder if each of you can sort of tell me a little bit about what you see the beer scene like right now in early 2023 in your particular cities. And Bryan, I'll start with you.
Thanks. Wow. A lot different than when I first got into the scene back in the 90s and started writing about it in 2005, I guess it was. For a while, I think within the city proper, we had 5 brewing establishments. And now by a semi-educated rough count, we're somewhere in the ballpark of 30 within the city limits. We long hung our hat in Philadelphia on being a great neighborhood beer bar culture.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And that's been well and good. And it's still alive. It's still good. Maybe not as great as it used to be for a lot of the same reasons that, people on your show have talked about before, or a lot of us, not just in Philly, but around the country have experienced. There's a culture, I think, that was really pushed for many years by Philly Beer Week, which was a great uniter of breweries and beer bars and consumers and enthusiasts. The pandemic set in, so as we all know there too, the last 2 to 3 years has thrown a big curveball that I think we're still trying to figure out how we're coming out of that.
Yeah, I want to talk about beer weeks and events and things as we get a little bit deeper into it. But Danner, from your perspective, what is the Kansas City beer scene like right now?
And so if you go back to 2005, when I started working at breweries, my first brewery job was at 75th Street Brewery. It was a little 7-barrel brew pub in the Waldo neighborhood. And really, I think there were like 2 breweries in the Kansas City area that had beer on shelves. It was like Boulevard and like Pony Express for a while. And then now I think we're approaching 40 breweries in the Kansas City area. And I think everyone's opening this, not the same type of brewery, but the similar business model to what you're seeing around the country. No one's opening a brewery saying, I'm going to be in 45 states in 10 years. They're saying, I'm going to make enough beer to sustain this business in this neighborhood. And it's really cool. We have some really awesome breweries. And then some of the breweries that opened up early on, kind of in the middle of that wave of Kansas City, seeing more breweries open up, have really improved and stepped up their game. But for the most part, all the breweries that have opened in the past couple of years have come out of the gate strong, making really awesome beers.
Rob, how is it? So I need a little bit of geographical clarification because people talk about Phoenix, but the game is in Glendale.
Yeah.
Which I understand is like a suburb of Phoenix, but like I don't fully understand how the geography works or what sort of tax dodge this accomplished.
The geography of Phoenix, the metro area, is basically a sheet of paper. There are not a lot of natural boundaries in Phoenix. The people say they're from the valley generally, and that comprises 100 miles by 100 miles. The city of Phoenix has the same square mileage as Los Angeles, and we have the population exceeding Philadelphia right now. And we have we're the fifth largest county in the country, so it's the nice thing to say about our breweries is that they are defining these neighborhoods because they're literally it's seamless going between Mesa, Scottsdale, Phoenix, Tempe, Chandler, Gilbert, Glendale, Mesa. Those were it's really hard to distinguish when you left a city and you've entered a city. So that's the challenge. I think our breweries are meeting that challenge. We have, I almost have to talk about the entire state sometimes because someone says, "Hey, I'm in Phoenix," and then they're up in Anthem, and I'm like, "Well, that's almost a Flagstaff." I mean, for me, to cross town. So, and then you're only a hop, step, and a jump from Sedona. We have about 100 businesses that run breweries here in Arizona, 140 locations, and about 65 to 70% of them are in the Metro Valley. So primarily taproom breweries now. There's a few brew pubs. We have the ability to stack licenses so we can be restaurants or we can be more bars if they want to be. So we have a lot of different ways that you can call yourself a brewery here.
How have you seen, I like that of breweries helping define neighborhoods. Is there something that you can sort of point to illustrate that?
Right now, the coolest place to be in the Valley seems to be Mesa. And Mesa is traditionally Mormon. And there was they have an avenue that was largely untouched when we develop things here in this part of the world. We just flatten it to the ground and start over. It's Phoenix is literally what we do. Unfortunately, that takes out a lot of buildings with character. Well, Mesa didn't do that, and they kind of shut out alcohol for quite a while. Over the years, we've actually forged some alliances with some of the Mormon leaders, and they like small business. They like small business community, and that's what we represent. So we've got a number of breweries open in Mesa, and some restaurants fill in. It's walkable even for Arizona, which is remarkable. It's off the light rail. So those are the things that happen when a couple breweries attract a restaurant or two, or they add on to the allure of some of the smaller restaurants. And I would say that's an example. Gilbert's another example.
How so?
Well, they're the new money Mormons.
Okay.
And they've attracted a lot of chain business, and there's quite a bit more investment in that. That's like right now you could compare that to Scottsdale. If you're familiar with nightlife here in Arizona, Scottsdale was the traditional leader. Gilbert's kind of pulling through. It skews a little older, but that's where all the new development is.
Danner, I've been thinking about how, what Rob was just saying of some of the growth that's been happening. And certainly Kansas City's gone through growth in the last 20 or so years, as far as like a metropolitan statistical area. And you mentioned the beer sort of grown along with that, but has there been any, from your standpoint, tangible impact that the beer industry has had on the larger city?
I think, kind of touching on the idea of the beer bar culture, and I think beer bars still have their place, but in Kansas City, especially, I'd say, and I don't mean any disrespect to the town that I live in and love, but I think you have to be honest. I think beer wise, we're probably, 5 to 10 years behind cities like San Diego or St. Louis or Chicago or whatever. And for the longest time, and if you wanted to get good beer, you had to go to a beer bar. You had to go to a bar that focused on beer. But now with breweries really opening up and trying to focus on their neighborhood, every bar, not to say that they're competing with the breweries, because I think breweries and beer bars offer a totally different thing. But all bars have good beer. But I think if you look at the growth of the city, I as a baseball fan, and I just have to horn it in, I feel like speaking of baseball, nobody said anything about baseball. But if you look at the growth,
how about them Royals?
Yeah. I mean, like more like the past 9 or 10 years, I think when Kansas City was on the national stage during the 2 World Series runs in 2014 and 2015, a lot of people came in from out of town, and Kansas City is not a huge metro area. I think we're around 3 million for the entire area, but it really is this small town where everyone kind of knows everyone. And it was interesting to see people come in from out of town and realize what we sort of quietly knew, that Kansas City was cool. And it's been a shift where, like, when people would come to town, before then, hey, Kansas City's great. You're like, oh my God, thank you. But now we can say, thank you in a way that says, we know it's great. And it's good to be receiving this national attention. And it's all sort of, grown that way the past 20 years for sure. But then the revitalization of downtown, the idea of, again, baseball stadium going down there. There's a lot happening in Kansas City right now.
How difficult is it for you to be on a football related show when all you want to do is talk about baseball?
I have absolutely no problem ignoring the main topic and talking about baseball. So it's not difficult for me at all.
I'll point out that we're recording this over Zoom, and Bryan's avatar is a picture of him, I imagine, as a much younger man, holding a Philadelphia Eagles pennant there. So I imagine you've been a long time fan, Bryan, and that this weekend is meaningful for you.
It is, and it may have been more comical to put a side by side of a then and now me there, because a little bit less hair, still, probably have that pennant somewhere. But we did go through a long dry spell of championships in any of our major sports here in Philadelphia, and that's a whole show in and of itself, I'm sure. To talk about the curse of William Penn and our long struggles here in Philadelphia, and talk about what makes us angry, if you think we're angry. But we did win 5 years ago.
Judging by the way that your fans usually stack the stadiums, yes, there's maybe not anger, but there's certainly issues.
There's a lot of passion. Let's just say.
Sure, it's not even a joke, but the old line of what do Boston fans and New York fans always agree on? It's that fans from Philly are the worst.
Oh, I thought we in New York said that about Boston.
No. New York and Boston are well aligned these days. We've never thrown batteries at Santa Claus.
Oh, wow. So you got the over on that, because I had you at 6 minutes or less before Santa Claus was brought up.
It's hard not to. I want to get back to beer bars though, because certainly some of the great beer bars in America started in Philly, and a lot of them still exist. I'm thinking of Monk's in particular, but Philly by and large was always a Yuengling town, and the whole state. But it was reliable that every bar you could go and get a pint of lager. And when Danner's talking about bars having craft and bars appealing to local. Has that happened in Philly, or is it still oases among a lot of more generic taps?
I'm sorry, was the question about Yingling is still
or just how is the beer bar scene overall? Is it still just like a few oases for good spots like Monk's and a handful of others, or has the city's bar scene embraced the local craft options or regional craft options?
For sure. I attracted the local beer enthusiasts as well. It was interesting preparing for this. I started going through years of thinking about, and I started off talking about some of the small number of breweries that existed 20, 30 years ago within the city limits, and those that have come and gone over the years, where we're at now, but also looked at it from a beer bar perspective as well. And knowing that just in the last couple of years, we've lost between 5 and 10, pretty darn good beer bars. I still made a list of around a couple dozen, more or less within the core of the city, where they've survived, they're doing well, and each of them almost has their own identifiable theme. Whether it's Monk's for a primarily Belgian angle to their offerings, Brauhaus Schmitz for German, Fergie's for UK experience, Standard Tap for local, and Johnny Brenda's for local focused tap lists. So I think the beer bar culture and vibe is still there, and I think, like was being said before, that they're coexisting pretty well with the local brewing scene.
Rob, I've been thinking about the way that these games usually are televised, and in between the endless commercials that are supposed to elicit all sorts of emotions in us and spur on our buying power. There's usually a lot of beauty shots from in and around the city, the state. And I often find myself when I'm watching some of these being like, oh, I should go check out that city. I should go back. Beer aside, when people are watching the game, if they're watching the game, and they're seeing all of these vistas from throughout your great state, why would you encourage them to come visit afterwards, and where would you want them to go and visit aside from the pretty well-known cavernous spots?
First of all, I would say you're correct in that where I live, which is in Tempe, which is 20 minutes from downtown Phoenix, I can drive an hour and a half and be in complete and utter wild spaces where I could probably die, but it would be remarkably beautiful, and they would have a hard time finding me. That is kind of the appeal. Is we can get out of the city and we can get up to Flagstaff and be in snow. We have 2 seasons in this state almost year round because of the elevation on some of our northern plateau and southern areas where we have viticultural areas, recognized areas. But the first thing I'd say is if you land in Phoenix, there's a couple breweries in the airport. You're within 15 minutes of a pint outside of the airport at surrounding breweries like Wren House, which you have been to, John.
Yep, with you.
Yes, they won the GABF for Spellbinder. They won a Fest Beer Award not too long ago at World Beer Cup. They're within 15 minutes of the airport, maybe 10. I mean, literally getting out of your seat. We've got Walter Station, which is in a 1970s firehouse. I know the firehouse beer thing is kind of played out, but they treat it with a historical angle.
That's a fun brewery. That's literally across the street from the tarmac.
Yeah. And we've got Phoenix Beer Co., which has its roots with George Hancock, the former owner of Pyramid. He opened it as Phoenix Ale Brewery. It's got a new ownership, and they've kind of retooled some things. So, I mean, that's right within the airport. And then you're probably going to, glom off into different areas, depending on primarily people come out here to visit their relatives. And so they're either out in Chandler or they're out and about.
Hey, grandma. Yeah.
So it is, I would tell people, this is a no tolerance DUI state. And so you will spend a lot of money on Ubers and you will be bumming rides off people. It's no joke. We don't have the Sheriff Joe tent prison anymore, but the laws are the same. So, and if you're going to the game or if you watch the game, there's stuff around the stadium, Glendale. There's Throne Brewing Companies around the State Farm Coliseum there, and they have a brewer, Brad Williams, who I have to mention. He used to work for another brewery, and we had the Brewers Association annual meeting here, and Jim Cook, John Mallett, Rob Todd, and those kinds of guys. We brought him to that brewery, and he was so freaked out, but they were so impressed with both the food and the beers. He's kind of a quiet guy, but I'm going to give him a shout because he deserves it. So there are those little gems out there. You just have to call me or find it. We have everything that a lot of bigger cities have, but it's just spread out by a few 10, 20 miles sometimes.
Yeah. Those can be expensive Ubers, but as you point out, it's more expensive on the other end and certainly more responsible.
But they're going to show a cactus during the bumpers. And yeah, you can see cactus. Actually, the city of Phoenix got in trouble because they colorized a photo of downtown and make it look a little more green.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
we're coming off some rain though. It is actually pretty lush. The desert is very lush.
Bryan, it's a similar question to you though. If people are thinking like, oh, I want to see what it's like to try to climb a greased lamppost, and I want to go visit Philly. I'm not going to give you guys any inches. All right. That
was on my bingo card as well.
I'm gonna tick them all. I'm gonna absolutely tick them all. I'm nothing if not a cliche and predictable. But if people want to go and visit your fair city, and they're obviously going to do all of the Liberty Bell and all of the historical aspects of it. But if they want to see the city for real in the way that you know it, right, what would you suggest 2 or 3 things that people do to get a true Philly experience? And I'm going to ask about food after this, so you don't have to get into food just yet.
Okay. All right. And I will start by saying, speaking of geography or topography, or however you want to say it, listening to Rob talk about being sprawling and a similar size to Philadelphia, we're both in that like 1.5, 1.6 million population. I did a little homework ahead of time too, and knowing Phoenix sprawls more than Philadelphia does, I didn't realize, is it something like a factor of 4 times the square mileage that Phoenix is compared to Philadelphia, something like that. So we pack about the same amount of people into a much tighter area. That's
why everybody's so angry.
Yeah, well, you never know. Could be. Although
I could never do the beer festivals that you guys do on the East Coast because you guys are packed too tight.
Although I did do the calculation on Boston and they're packed even tighter. So back to my comment from earlier.
Yes.
No, but that being said, during the pandemic, one of my favorite things to do was take the train in from the western suburbs where I live and then simply walk the city. Could have been 5 miles up to 10, 12, 15 miles, making stops along the way wherever a bar, restaurant, brewery was open and serving outside. It was the grand old days of, being allowed to walk around with open containers in public, to help keep these establishments alive. But continuing on with the theme of being a walkable city, Philadelphia is extraordinarily walkable from when you're downtown, especially from river to river. If you were to get off at the train station, 30th Street Station over on the Schuylkill River, you can walk a couple miles across town to the Delaware River, to the Jersey border, and cross through all types of neighborhoods along the way. relative, I have to say relatively, I guess, safe. It's you have to watch wherever you are nowadays, of course, but I would easily recommend walking the city from river to river, stopping along the way. You'll find a brewery, you'll find a high quality beer bar, you'll find a good restaurant, a BYO, grab a bottle from the local bottle shop and sit outside, cafe. Since you'll ask about food later, I'll mention the Reading Terminal Market, which is right above the train station, but we can go into a little bit more detail on that later. Great food. There's a great beer bar inside of the train station. So
there's also a great roast pork sandwich at Genix there. That's on my ticket list to share with you as well. Oh yeah, no, that's a sandwich to jump on the Amtrak for. Danner, I'm embarrassed to say I've never been to Kansas City. And
you should be embarrassed.
I mean, on my list of things to be embarrassed about, I mean, it's pretty high up there and it's a pretty long list. So, while I have understandings of the greater Phoenix area and certainly Philly, I'm going into this question blind and really curious. And you are Mr. Kansas City based on your social media. There is no bigger homer, and I mean that in the best possible way that I've ever met for a city than you and Kansas City. And so, if folks want to go and visit and get the true KC experience, what do you suggest they do?
Well, I think I would say if you're gonna stay in the city, stay downtown Crossroads area. You could easily stay out in the suburbs or near the airport, but that's going to put you so far from the city center. I mean, the airport from my house, I'm maybe 15 minutes south of downtown, but the airport is every bit of 40-minute drive from my house. So it's pretty far up there. But I think things you have to hit when you come to Kansas City. I always mention the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. We have an amazing collection of paintings and artifacts. That it's free to visit every day. It truly is just a gem of the Midwest. And then we also have the Negro League Baseball Museum here, and Bob Kendrick and Kiana Sinks are sort of the faces of that. And they recently campaigned and got Buck O'Neil rightfully elected to the Hall of Fame. In Kansas City, we've known he was a Hall of Famer for a long time, but now it's official. Those are two spots you have to hit. And when you're down at the Negro League Baseball Museum, you're right there next to the Jazz Museum in the 18th and Vine District. You said wait on the food, but obviously tons of barbecue everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful city that we are really investing a lot in downtown. We have a streetcar that runs from the Union Station area all the way down to the River Market, and they're in the process of expanding that. So you can get on that, and it's free to ride and hop off every few stops and find cool places to check out and areas to explore. And really, I think and this is what I do when I travel, is I find myself at a bar and I talk to the folks from that city. Weird. And well, yeah, we are ridiculously nice here. It's weird. When I worked for Boulevard, I remember years ago, we hosted a bunch of folks who were in from the Stone distribution arm in Southern California. And they were like, people are like serial killer nice here. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense, because serial killers aren't nice. But they're like, no, like last night we went out to eat and the bartender asked how we were doing, and he stopped to listen to the answer. I'm like, that's because he cares, man. And, people will tell you like, hey, if you don't know where you're going, check this spot out. And I think people here are just so real. And there are a lot of people in the city who are like me, who are just on fire for making sure people have a great experience when they come here.
Bryan, does that sound unsettling to you that people are friendly in the city?
No, not at all. Because I would say almost the exact same thing about sitting down at a bar in Philadelphia. It's hard not to talk to somebody in Philadelphia, and it's hard not to get genuine responses. And I'm saying that without snark or with, no. I like that answer, and I feel the same way. Traversing Philadelphia, even when I don't know people, it's very easy to strike up conversation.
I had the gif of Jeremy Danner clapping in his Royals uniform the entire time until he talked about serial killers, and it went a different direction.
Yeah,
and we do have a couple of them in Philly as well in our history.
Well, as long as we're being honest here, I think people leave LA and they get here and they can't find the means to get anywhere else. So we got a lot of transplants.
I find it. I always enjoy visiting other cities, and especially out in the Midwest, because I do feel like hopefully you're going to find polite people no matter where you are, and people who are eager to help out. But I do feel like the Midwest has always been that much more. I remember when I first moved to Indianapolis from New Jersey, and having that same experience that the stone distribution people had, where people, would say, well, how are you today? And then actually wait for an answer and listen to the answer, as opposed to just like, hey, how you doing? Like, and then I'm not actually waiting on an answer. That's just how I'm greeting you, kind of thing. So I like that. This is at some point during the week, there's going to be breathless television coverage about the ultimate spread at your home watching party, and they're going to talk about the foods that you can make at home to have to represent the two teams and hopefully the city where it's being played. I'm not expecting anybody listening to this to actually go and do full spreads, but what are I mean, I'm just going to get some frozen stuff and put it in the air fryer. But what are the foods that define your city, your region, Rob Fulmer?
Well, we're as broken up about those kinds of things as our topography here, I think. We are a hospitality city. We are a tourism state. We have lots of very high-end resorts here, many chefs, including Chris Bianco, Pizzeria Bianco. We've got a couple other James Beard Award winners. But when it comes down to it, we cater to a lot of people from other parts of the country. So we do have a strong contingent of Californians. We have Wisconsinites, people from Illinois. So we have a lot of different things. Do we do them exceedingly well? Not as well as we do things like Sonoran hot dogs, tacos.
What is a Sonoran hot dog?
A Sonoran hot dog.
Should I know this?
Yeah, you should. You should. And there, it's simple, but it can be sublime when everything is pulled together the right way. It is a hot dog, a generally high quality hot dog. It's put in a bolillo, which is a hot dog bun, but it's got a little bit more crust to it, and it's split down the top. Okay. And the hot dog is wrapped in bacon, and then it's dressed like a taco. So you've got beans, you've got chili de árbol, which is this sort of green hot sauce with you'll have some other salsas in there, but it is dressed like a taco. And if you go to a brick and mortar place, it's going to be a steamed bun. If you're hitting up a cart, it's going to be toasted, and you can tell the difference. And some people prefer one over the other.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer the grilled, because that means I'm standing in a cart and I'm either on my way to have some more fun, or I just got done having some fun. To sit down in a restaurant to eat a Sonora hot dog means I'm just going there to eat. I guess that's the distinction I draw. I do like the toastiness of it, but so it's challenge sometimes finding a stand that's open on a particular day, but they go late into the night, and those are the things I would recommend. We of course have. We've got high-end sushi. Believe it or not, most of our sushi is pretty fresh because it has to be piloted here. It can't be on trucks. So we have we have everything that any other city has, I would say. But like I said, you have to find it.
Danner's Barbecue, where you're going with this question?
We're having some friends over, and we're going to make a pot of chili. And
are you just going to be watching MLB Classics all day?
Right. Yeah. Well, the Dominican Winter League baseball is
Super Bowl party ever.
I know, this is weird.
He's showing his old Royals games from '87. Yeah.
I've been to a playoff party for every game so far, and I cannot name a single big play that's occurred. I've had fun because I like food and beer and my friends, but yeah, we're going to make chili. And one of our friends makes these amazing cinnamon rolls, and we're going to put the cinnamon roll in the chili is what we're going to do. That's some Midwest stuff for sure. But I mean, like, if you're going to go barbecue, I think Kansas City has like two distinct schools of barbecue. There's old school classic stuff, Arthur Gates, Bryant's, Jack Stack, and then we have some new school barbecue. There's a spot called Chef Jay that's doing some really awesome gourmet barbecue, which is I don't fully understand what that is. There's a restaurant called Buck Tui, and they do Thai style barbecue, and Buck Tui literally translates to fat boy, and that's Teddy, the owner and chef's name. So like you can have a really cool barbecue experience, but there's so much good barbecue that, you know, if you were to take my least favorite place in Kansas City, it'd probably be the best barbecue joint in Philly. Shade thrown.
Oh,
all right.
Wait,
you know what? You took it there, and you want to go baseball one more time?
No, okay.
Just say Royals one more time. I'll bring up 1980.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would just like to say that we have baseball and football and hockey teams, but we're not talking about them because we don't want to talk about them.
Well, unless you want to throw New York under the bus, we can go back to 01 and your Diamondbacks, right?
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that was a good series.
It was a good series.
Yeah, it was a great series.
I want to talk about Philly in just a second, but Dan, just you hear about Kansas City barbecue, and is there you named all these different spots and the different types, but is there a unifying method that qualifies as KC barbecue, or has it really just morphed into barbecue that is made in Kansas City?
I mean, I think if you look at like Kansas City and St. Louis barbecue are quite similar. I think if you look at the sauce, it's typically a little bit sweeter, molasses, tomato-based sauce, as opposed to like a mustard or vinegar sauce that you get in Carolina. But we have spots opening up that are doing, like I said, the Thai style barbecue. There's another one opening up that has like another fusion spin to it. I can't remember the name of it, but it's interesting to see, because nobody's asking, are there too many barbecue joints in Kansas City? Because there's not, but it's fun to see people open up and be focused on this type of barbecue in the same way that, 15 years later, after I started working in beer in Kansas City, you're seeing breweries open up that, okay, we specialize in lagers, or we make, really good hazy IPAs. So you're seeing this focus now versus just like, oh, we're just going to open a barbecue restaurant and hope for the best. You have to have something interesting or unique. Otherwise it's tough to justify, why would I take the risk of going there when I know that these spots are always going to be super solid every time?
So Bryan, I mentioned Dinnick's before, and I know a lot of people are going to want to talk about Philly cheesesteaks and everything, but the roast pork sandwich is the superior sandwich in your fair city, isn't it?
Absolutely. And now saying cheesesteaks, you're only one block away from getting bingo.
Yes.
Well, I won't tell you what your other choices are, but I have faith that you will hit bingo.
Maybe. I'm not doing any of this on purpose. I'm just.
No, I know. It's it sets up perfectly though. I'm going to try to wrap a lot into this one because the roast pork. I have nothing against cheesesteaks. I was raised on them all my life. They've been around. There are some very good ones out there. There's a lot of marginal ones, but somewhere in the early to mid 90s, and I'm almost certain it was at Tony Luke's down near the stadium complex, I was introduced to the roast pork sandwich, and the depth of flavor in there, because what it is I believe the cut is the pork shoulder with aged provolone, typically with broccoli rabe, typically on a long roll, and I prefer the seeded long rolls. And if you like an extra little kick, which a lot of people do, the long hot peppers laid in there as well. It just makes for a absolutely, flavorful, flavor deep sandwich.
I've always been partial to the broccoli rabe.
Yeah. I think some people may put spinach on it. I can't recall that exactly, but some other type of green. But yeah, the broccoli rabe has a distinctive flavor to it, which just makes it so much more complex
than
Yeah. And you mentioned Dinnick's. They're in the Reading Terminal Market. They go back to the late 1800s, so they're well over 100 years old. Great place for sampling. Well, not just sampling, but eating foods from growers and producers from the Amish and Mennonite community out in Lancaster County, or from city-based restaurants and retailers. But then all across South Philly, you can find places And they're showing up on menus of, higher end restaurants and your average, corner pubs. But you'll find legendary places like John's and Nick's in South Philly. I mentioned Tony Luke's. But a way to wrap a brewery into this as well is in South Philly, across from Dock Street, one of the oldest and longest surviving craft brewers in Philadelphia, is a place called Porco's, which you've heard of it. Yeah, it does amazing things with.
God, I haven't been there in years. Yeah. Okay.
And they have a roast pork sandwich and cubanos and porchetta sandwiches that are just with pork cracklings on there, and just amazing job. So you can get a 1-2 punch between a good brewery with some history in Philly, as well as a newer sandwich shop that really does well with the roast pork sandwich.
See, now I really just want to get on an Amtrak down and just spend the day eating in Philly.
Well,
I do love Philly, and it's it's easy to make fun of your teams and your fans, but like I need a really good sandwich now.
Well, you were talking about Super Bowl spreads, and for our neighborhood, I will almost certainly, weather permitting, bust out the pizza oven in the backyard. And a few months ago, I had taken my first attempt at making a roast pork pizza with everything we mentioned, the long hots and the Rob and the provolone on there. And it turned out pretty darn good.
I can hear Rob and Danner researching flights right now.
I'm always hungry.
Yeah. I just need to do an eating tour in all three of your cities now. I really want a Sonoran hot dog, and I want barbecue and all of this. So to tie it back into beer, there are always, most cities have a big festival or small festival or something to entice beer travelers to come and see the city's beer scene. Rob, what is it for the Great Area of Phoenix? What is an annual gathering or event or tapping or something that you feel serious beer drinkers should come and experience at least once in their lives?
I just want you to tie together my discussion of the Mormons and Bryan's of the Mennonites, and ask Jeremy where that's going. We have our 23rd annual Strong Beer Festival coming up the 18th, not too long from now. We might hit 75 degrees. It'll be amazing. We generally have about 150 breweries, both in state and out of state. It's on 500,000 square feet of dead grass. It's seasonal, but that's our baby, and we can get as many as 9,000 people together for that. So it's probably one of the biggest in an era when we're not having very big festivals anymore. That seems to be doing okay. That kicks off our beer week too, that statewide thing. So we'll have events for 10 days or so, ranging from strictly beer events to things like burlesque shows, and we have some of the industry people getting together, the women of the industry getting together for sort of a WWE style arm wrestling extravaganza. So we try to have fun. And again, the Strong Beer Festival, which I brought you out to, John.
I was there in early 2020 before the world shut down.
Yeah, it was our last hurrah. That got us through a couple hard times here during the pandemic. So it's super important as a fundraiser for our guild, so that we can continue to protect and promote and grow our business conditions here for breweries, and that's really been the thing that's propelled us for the last 20 years.
Danner, why should what's the big event? What's the small event? What's the meaningful beer event that people should come to Kansas City for?
So coming up in April, we have the Parkville Microfest is what it's called. And it's always, it's usually in the third or fourth weekend in April. And the weather leading up to the event is always beautiful. And then it's absolute trash the day of the event. It'll be sunny and 72 on that Friday. And that Saturday morning, it'll drop to 55 and rain all damn day. but it's amazing because no one cares. Most people, if they're dressed appropriately, have a great time. Other people, if they're not dressed appropriately, they drink until they feel they're dressed appropriately. But that's the big outdoor fest that sort of kicks off the festival season, in Kansas City, coming out of the colder months. It was 60 yesterday, but I know like March is going to be cold again. It's like, that's kind of the big one. And then Boulevardia Taps and Tastes is a real big one that draws in a lot of breweries from around the country. And I was fortunate enough to be, one of the folks who was involved in the early planning stages of that festival. And that takes place in Crown Center again this year. And that'll be June, Father's Day weekend. But that brings in a lot of folks from around the country to check out the city. And, it's more than just a beer fest, but to me, those are the big two. I think I lean more towards Parkville just because it's outside, you're in the grass. People bring their dogs, and I want to see how many dogs I can pet in 5 hours is sort of my goal.
It's a good goal.
Yeah.
It's a really good goal. Bryan, is it still Philly Beer Week, or is there something else that the city is doing that should be on beer lovers' radars?
Well, I hope it is. I hope it's still Philly Beer Week. And I say that because, and if I step back a second, I have this, what do you call it, melancholy or bittersweet feeling about events, because I think, over the last 20 or so years of craft really gaining momentum and recognition and respect in the mainstream, that it's these beer events, from small and medium-sized ones to these big beer weeks, Philly Beer Week being the kind of the first and preeminent beer week that really spawned, this, I guess, nationwide, right? Phenomenon of 10-day beer weeks, which I always like to call an imperial beer week, because it's not just a 7-day week. And
I like that.
Because you need 2 weekends to bookend it, of course. Can't just end on a Friday. And I don't know if this is the same in every market. There, definitely was, going into the pandemic, a little bit of a tail off in beer week attendance or popularity. Events in general, maybe we're getting a little played out in general again. So coming out of the pandemic now, I really hope, I've not heard much, chatter yet in the way of a 2023 beer week in Philly. Now, it is typically the first week of June, so we still have some time, but by now we normally start to hear some chatter. Last year was kind of informally put together, if you want to put it that way, by a handful of bar owners and brewery owners, and promoted through social media, which had some nice turnout. But I would love to see it get back to kind of more of a grandiose type of 10-day of educational and crazy antics and everything in between. We used to have a thing too that has gone on pause for a few years called the Craft Beer Express, which would be held in the spring and fall. And a dozen or so beer bars around the city would get hooked up by a couple school buses that were on the circuit between all of them throughout the day. And each bar had a different themed event going on. So those types of things I'd like to see come back. And I hope that we're all, pun sort of intended, thirsty for that type of environment again. The one we did just have, what was it, a month or so ago, 2 months ago, was Yards' annual Real Ale Festival.
Okay.
Really happy to see how well attended it was in their new location. If you haven't been to Philly in a while, to Yards.
That's a massive space. Yeah.
A new massive space.
100-barrel brew house. Yeah.
It's
70,000 square feet, I think, if I recall correctly. Large space, but they spread the firkins out throughout the brewery. They had, I think, about 55 or 60 firkins, well attended by industry folk as well as consumers as well. So that has continued on. That's I think a significant event that's worth seeking out for sure.
There's all jokes aside, there's a lot of great reasons to go visit Philly and drink beer, and even if it's just going to Monk's, I think is a good enough reason. Being mindful of time and knowing that you all have parties to get ready for this week, I want to ask each of you the Green Door question. Danner, you've been on this show before, but that was before I actually started asking this question. So the premise is, at the beginning of the pandemic, my wife and I rewatched The Good Place, the television show. And in the 4th season, they introduce the concept of a green door. You can walk through it and be anywhere with whoever you want, doing whatever you want. And so if we had a green door on our plane of existence and this conversation ended and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking? And Rob, I imagine you have an answer loaded up for this.
That's a lot of pressure. Oh, you're asking me first.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking.
No, I know you've heard this show before. I don't know if the other guys listen to it. So that's why I was giving you the chance.
First of all, I heard you ask this question of Moonlight, Bryan, and from the Bay Area.
Moonlight, yeah.
I can't, being from the Bay Area, I can't even believe that no one mentioned the obvious behind the green door joke. But
I don't know if I know that because I'm not from the Bay Area. What is the obvious joke? It's
one of the earliest porn movies in the 70s that came out.
Good job, John.
Somebody brought this up to me recently. Somebody sent me an instant message recently, or a Facebook Messenger, saying that they think of that every time I ask this question, and I had forgotten it until just right now. But is that something that the Bay Area do you get that where freshman year of high school? I don't understand.
That's where the
was it shot there?
That scene started in the 70s, either New York or Bay Area, both.
Okay.
I'm not a porn historian, but there you go.
Your next episode.
Okay. All right. You've stalled long enough.
I know. I completely nuked the question. I have thought about it a little bit, and my grandfather used to be a Manhattan drinker, and being from Wisconsin, he didn't prefer the way you would make an old fashioned in Wisconsin or in Manhattan. Wisconsin, that drink is primarily made with brandy instead of whiskey. So
yeah, and sugar, like sugar cubes.
Yeah. So I'm the idiot out here that grew up listening to him to order that a million times. So I'm the idiot out here going whiskey Manhattan. It sounds really redundant. But I never really had a drink with him, and certainly not in the context of being in this job and sort of wanting to discuss, his relationship to alcohol and because he was just a one drink guy a day, and that was it. My father, used to talk about touring the Pearl Brewery when he was stationed down there and how they would take the tour. But, in my recollection, he really didn't really drink, and he's definitely not drinking now. So I would probably want to take him to any number of bars, but for some reason, taking us all out of their element, not going anywhere in the United States, maybe going to something like Mort Sabit, and just kind of seeing where that goes, and just discuss what I love about this industry and about the products we make and the people that we meet along the way, and see where that goes.
I like it. So Bryan, you walk through a green door, you're in any pub, any brewery, anywhere in the world. Where are you going? Who are you drinking with? And what are you drinking?
Yeah. I think I was going to say I hate to sound redundant, but I love the sentimental angle of it. I was going to dork out, do a beer dork type of thing, but at the risk of sounding redundant, I'm going to take the sentimental approach too. I'm looking on my desk here at a picture of my father in the Marines on Hawaii, and I never had the opportunity to drink with him as an adult, a legal age drinking adult. And I'd love to just have a Miller High Life with him. To the best of my recollection, that was on pictures on the picnic tables when I was a kid. I remember serving him a Miller High Life from the fridge, So I'd like to watch a Super Bowl with him this weekend with the Miller High Life. But also, then when the Eagles win, by the way, just seeing if Jeremy's paying attention.
I'm here.
When the Eagles win, we'd celebrate, maybe with a lambic or an imperial stout or something. And I'd love to get his reaction, kind of like Rob was saying, kind of get his reaction to, what he makes of, today's beer flavors and this world that I exist in.
Danner?
So I'm going to give you two answers. This is purely just like a business convenience purpose. If there was a green door that I could open and be at Four Hands where I work without a 4-hour drive, that would be super cool. That would make my job real easy. But there's a brew pub in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico called Los Muertos, and the beer is fine. It's without flaw. It's cold and it's wet. But I love that city. That's a place that we'd like to have a second home or maybe a full-time home down the road. So I'd love to be there with my wife and my son. And then there's a family that we became best friends with them. We moved in next door to them back in like 2009, I think, and just hit it off. And that's kind of become our family here in town. So if I could be there, drinking whatever with Randall and my son Cooper and Don and Hillary and Allison, I'd be set, dude. Have a couple beers and walk down the beach and get some oysters and chill out would be fantastic for me.
I dig it. Well, I want to thank all three of you for being on the show. I hope on Sunday you're eating well and you're drinking well and you're with good company and enjoying a good time, regardless of the outcome and how it affects you, if it affects you at all. But really, thanks to the three of you for sharing some insights on your cities and the food and drink and why we should all be going there. And I have been researching plane tickets and Amtrak tickets. So hopefully I'll see you all soon.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks. And I have to leave with Go Birds. And I spell Eagles for Rob, Eagles, because I'm sure you haven't heard that at all this week yet.
Hey, Bryan, what was the last thing that I missed on the bingo card?
You could have gone with Rocky.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, somebody could have picked on the Eagles' soft schedule this year because I've heard that a lot. But yeah, Rocky was, I think, the big obvious one that nobody mentioned.
Yeah, the town didn't want that statue, though.
Well, it's at the art museum now next to the steps. So.
I know, but didn't Stallone donate that? And people are like, yeah, we didn't ask for this.
The art museum didn't care for it at the top of the steps. That's why it's at the bottom of the steps off to the side.
Yeah. It's.
But, there you go.
If he hears this, you guys are in trouble.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm used to it.
All right,
guys. Thanks again.
Thank you, John.
All right. Great talking to you all.
What are you eating and drinking for the game? Let me know by emailing. It's John Hall. That's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com, or you can tell me on Twitter at John_Hall. That's also how you can get in touch with questions, comments, and guest suggestions. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can check out the podcast page, the merch page, and read about great new content as well as the archives going back to 1979. You can also follow All About Beer on social media by simply searching at All About Beer. If you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, email us at info@allaboutbeer.com, or you can just help us out individually by going to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. One more time, All About Beer has a podcast channel now. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.